Hi, Caro.
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
It's very well. I love your accent, I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so I just want to start by saying thank you and welcome. And the reason I've been doing these is a lot of my friends in New York are cooped up in their studio apartments and can't get out. And they're all doing like virtual wine tastings and seminars, and we're all drinking probably too much. And so I wanted to show some small producers who need a little marketing love and show, a little wine education, but show where people are from, and then also to get outside and show the vineyards. So that's why I've been
Yeah.
reaching out to people like you. And I want to say also, Martin Walker recommended you. He's become a friend who has a series of murder mysteries in the Perigord in the Dordogne that are fantastic. And I just read his latest one. And
Yeah.
I got to say, there's such a great escape. If you're stuck inside, get a Martin Walker book. There's some at the New York Public Library ebooks, and they're definitely on Amazon, and they're a fantastic escape. So thank you, Martin,
Oh,
for introducing us.
yeah, absolutely. And wow, they are such a great read, aren't they? A
Such a
true
good read
escape.
because there's a mystery, but there's some history of France, and there's always some international news thing. So you really learn, every country. And
Yeah,
I'm not just saying America, but every country you get so focused on your own news, and this way you see a different viewpoint because he's so international, and it's really
truly.
it's a lovely way to get a little education.
I totally agree.
So I want to start, and I just before you got on, I talked about your book, which I'm on chapter 5 now, and I'm really loving it. But before we talk
Thank
about
you.
that, can you just introduce yourself, what your background is, how you got to Bergerac, and then talk about the winery?
Sure thing. So, yeah, Caro Feely, and the winery is Chateau Feely, so like feel with a Y. And it's our family name, which is an Irish name. We landed up coming to Bergerac totally by chance. We had a dream to go wine farming, which was something we had held since Sean and I met in Johannesburg back in 1993. He was a journalist like Martin Walker, who we were just talking about. And but we both had roots, rural roots. We had grown up on farms, and Sean's grandparents were wine growers, and I shared a house with a guy that was a master of wine. So we were both pretty into our wine. And kind of one of the first things we dreamed about was, wouldn't it be great to go wine farming? But it was one of those things that was out there, an impossible kind of dream. Um, and we were both just starting out. We had student loans up to there, and we weren't going anywhere near a vineyard for a long time. But work took us, in fact, to Cape Town and then to Dublin. And we thought we'd go back to Cape Town, but we came to France on a wine holiday, and we totally fell in love. And that was the start of, oh, maybe we'll go to France to follow our vineyard dream rather than back to South Africa. And of course, with a name like Feely and my husband Sean Feely, we have Irish roots as well. So hence the Triskel, which is our logo, which is a Celtic symbol. But so the Irish roots, but yeah, we landed up falling in love with France and started to look for a vineyard, and many, many years of saving and dreaming and planning. And we finally found our bonheur in Saussignac, which is a very small village of Gaulois, like Asterix. And it's known for its sweet wine, but in fact we don't make sweet wine anymore. We only make dry wines because we've got too much demand for our dry whites, so we don't make sweet wine anymore. And there are a lot of people making lovely sweet wine around us that we're happy to sell on their behalf and recommend. So yeah, but Saussignac as an appellation is, of course, sweet wine like Montbazillac and Sauternes.
So I want to come back to that because I believe if it's Saussignac, it has to be sweet, and
Yes,
Montbazillac, but you can make it dry and call it Bergerac.
that's right.
Okay,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
Go ahead. And
So,
sweet wine from Bergerac, either Monbazillac or Saussignac, it's still botrytis, but can you tell us that tradition a little bit?
yeah, sure. Sure. So you're right. I mean, Bergerac as a region, it's a bit like Bordeaux. You know, anyone in Bordeaux can make dry white, dry red, rosé, if they call it appellation Bordeaux. But then if you're in a specific zone of Bordeaux, like Sauternes, then you can have something specific that's unique to that area, like Sauternes being for sweet wine, Saussignac for sweet wine, or like in Saint-Emilion where it would be red wine. So here in Saussignac, yeah, the one that we're known for is the sweet wine. And that goes back, in fact, to like the mists of time, but essentially to the monks that started to make the sweet wine here in Saussignac back in around 800. So there's amazing history here as well. And I don't know if my mobile data is good enough to actually have a walk around, but I'd like to take you around so I can point out some of the amazing history we've got here as well, like not just in terms of our, you know, the Chateau of Saussignac, which is part of our commune's history, but even here on the farm at Feely Farm, some of the history that we have here.
I would love that if you can. I really would love that. When I was at Chateau Bellegarde, the Count showed me where the 100 Years' War started, and it's just it's a fantastic. I mean, I'm in love with the region, so I would love that. And just a little quick note. I had always thought, you know, you can sell a bottle of sweet wine for much more than a bottle of dry wine, and I thought the economics of that didn't work out until somebody pointed out that you can make about 5 times more bottles when it's dry because the concentration, and so the math there. So that applies to you too, right?
Yeah. For
Okay.
sure.
So how does someone who is also, where do your nicknames come from? Your husband calls you Carolinus and you call him SF in the book.
SF for Sean Feely, just his initials. And Caroline is my real name is Caroline, and he used to just he does still call me Carolinus. I think he sometimes calls me Mrs. C as well. But there's a bit of a tradition of nicknames in the family. Like our daughters were counting how many nicknames I'd given them, and I think they got to several hundred.
I love it. And again, we've just become friendly, so I started following you on Instagram. And how is the cooking going? Because I haven't gotten to that part in the book yet.
Oh my God, you don't want to know.
Those biscuits look fabulous, though.
Well, it's getting better. It's getting better. And much better since Sean took over the cooking.
Okay. Well, those biscuits were very, very gorgeous, and I really wanted to try that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how does someone who is in IT and finance go to living in the country? What was that like just as a person changing lifestyles? Just could not be more opposite, 180 degrees from the big city to living in the country and working with your hands. What was that like?
Yeah, that was a big change for us, a real shock, in fact. I would say that I guess we had come from like farming background and we were into gardening and so on, but nothing prepares you for real farming. I mean, farming, and I think that's another thing actually that I always try to, like whenever I'm speaking or doing wine dinners, people often say to me, you keep talking about it a farm and not a vineyard. And I'm like, well, it is a farm. And so often with wine, we forget that. We forget that it's actually farming and it's a darn hard job and we're completely, you know, at the whim of the weather, and we kind of just see the pretty barrels and the lovely glass of wine, and it's important to remember that it is farming and it is hard work. And a couple of the, you know, one of the things that really shocked me in the first year I went on a couple of courses, and one of them came with a risk assessment document, which reminded me that there were 4 dumb ways to die as a wine grower, and how many wine growers die by those ways. And actually, you know, and you hear of this all the time. I don't know, I'm sure in California it's the same. Well, I know it is in other places as well, although safety is becoming better, but you know them all, you know, machinery, falling from a height, electrocution, and of course the old favorite in the winery of asphyxiation from CO2. So it's a pretty tough job, and it was quite a shock when we got here, but so many good things as well. So I'd say it's very passionate. You really live. I guess you live with the elements, and you live with nature as well, which is something that we all need and love. And I think that's you know, connecting with the earth, being outside, and I think that's so important for all of us. And I hope that, I guess this in fact what we're going through right now is almost a wake-up call that we do need more natural space around us, that we do need more nature where people can be outside and, you know, get fresh air.
Yeah, our president wants everybody to go back to work very, very soon, and I'm hoping we can all just kind of pause and appreciate the upside of the sky clearing up, the water's clearing up, people cooking at home, people talking on the phone with their friends, and learning to, you know, to do canning and to cook at home and to not waste. And I'm trying to focus on the upside of this. In a second, I want to ask you to turn your camera around and show us the beautiful scenery behind you. But I want to say hi to Chateau Le Péral. I love you guys, and I love your label, actually. And I have had your wine at my restaurant in New York. So if you would DM me, I'd love to chat with your neighbors at Chateau Le Péral.
Oh, yeah. Well, you read about them in the book, too.
Oh, excellent. I can't wait. Good.
Yeah.
So
Tim and Isabel are great friends.
I love their wine.
So if I just do the switch around, you should get the camera on the other side, and then I can show you.
Oh, my God. So that's where you have your coffee in the morning?
Well, in fact, this is... this is where I'm in the lodge, which is one of our accommodations, which right now is not rented because, of course, we're shut down. So
if somebody wants to stay there, Caro, if somebody wants to stay there, they fly into Bordeaux or Bergerac. I think it's fun to drive up from Bordeaux and see it. So it's about an hour and a half from the Bordeaux airport.
Yeah, an hour and 20 minutes from Bordeaux airport.
And it's a little not super pleasant in Bordeaux, but it's also kind of cool because it's interesting to look at the architecture while you're stuck in the city. But then once you get out, it's just these gorgeous rolling hills, and I heartily recommend coming up to stay with you. And where do they find your rental property? Where are you listed?
So it's on the web on the website chateaufili.com.
Okay, fabulous.
Yeah.
So many people that I'm chatting with have rental properties, and I think it's just the best way to kind of visit. And there's nothing like waking up and seeing the vines outside.
Totally. Oh, it's just it's a real tonic. And this time of year with the spring and the shoots are it's just so green and vibrant. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's really gorgeous.
Can you tell us about the Chateau and what it was like becoming biodynamic and organic, and how that transition worked, and then go through the different grapes you raise and wines that you make?
Yeah, sure. So I guess something that comes through quite strongly in my books is, how passionate I am about organic and biodynamic and the environment as well. And I think that, for me, first base is definitely organic, because there are not nearly as many of us that are biodynamic. So, and at least with organic, you've got a sign that's on the bottle that everybody can look for, and it's easy to understand. So it's definitely super important. And of course, biodynamic is another step beyond that. And I mean, organic, at the base of it, it's no chemical fertilizer, no weed killer or herbicide, no systemic fungicide, no systemic insecticide. So that's organic. And then biodynamic is organic plus. So we have to work even more naturally than under organic. And that means things like using stinging nettle to help the vines to stay healthy, using the biodynamic preparations like the 500 and the 501, which are things that help the immunity of the vines. So there's a lot of information on this on our website. If anyone's interested in learning more about it, there's a section under the visits tab that has a biodynamic and organic trail, which is a really detailed explanation of organic farming, biodynamic farming, and then organic winemaking and biodynamic winemaking, and exactly what those mean, you know, quantitative and qualitatively. And so I really go into a lot of detail on it on the website, more than I could just explaining it here. So if anyone is interested, and of course happy to field any questions if anyone wants to email me or DM me if they've got questions after looking at that trail. So we did that kind of based on a physical trail that was in the vineyard, which takes you around looking at the different grapes, at the different vineyards, at the different terroirs that we have. And so what I wanted was that people could actually get a whole lot more information online than what they found just on the boards in the vineyard, and hence the links onto the website. But actually it means that anyone anywhere can get all that information as well, which is really nice side effect. But that links neatly into your question about the grape types. So we were just looking out onto the vineyard there at our Semillon, which is actually very old Semillon. It was planted in 1945. So we're lucky to have, I said we had a lot of history here in terms of history, like stone building history and the farm history, but we also have history in terms of our actual plant history, which is pretty amazing and something we're very proud of, and that we really love, and we're hoping to keep for a long time more. But the Semillon is these grand old dames of Semillon, which we use for dry white that is tank aged, and then dry white that's barrel aged. So Silex is the tank aged one, and Generosité is the barrel aged one. And of course, we follow organic, biodynamic, and natural winemaking with all of our wines. So everything in the vineyard followed as naturally as possible. Little bit of copper, but we've got a very, very low dose of copper, one of the lowest in the region. And then hand-picked and minimal intervention in the winery. So that's the Semillon. And then we've got Merlot that we do rosé and red wine, and we've got Cabernet Sauvignon, also a little bit of rosé and red wine.
Wow.
And pure Sauvignon as well, Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon, okay, of course. Now, the vines that were planted in 1945, is that like right? Yeah. Was Bergerac occupied in World War II? Because I've seen those Nazi submarine bunkers in Bordeaux on that river, and
yeah,
part of Bordeaux, like on the beach in Arcachon, you see those bunkers. One of them is made into a cocktail bar.
Yeah,
in the south of the it's south of the Garonne. But was Bergerac occupied, and does that mean your vines were planted right after World War II?
That's it, exactly. And you know, in terms of occupation, it was definitely occupied. It wasn't like, I don't think, if you were in a big city, it wasn't as
Sure.
intense as it was for, say, Bordeaux. Because I think if you were in the country, anyone, you were a little bit spared. Although that said, there were some towns, like there was a resistance town in the Dordogne where the entire town was wiped out, and it's extremely
Yeah,
I
Martin
guess
touches on that, I think.
yeah, exactly. So there is definitely World War II history here. And I'm sure you know the book Wine and War for more on
Yeah.
the particularly the Bordeaux side of history. But our vines, actually, interesting anecdote about the farm is the guy who owned it for a couple of generations was an Italian who came as part of the people that were moved in to repopulate the farms after everybody died during the war. So a lot of the farmers died, and then there was no one to take over. So there was an initiative to bring Italians in, and the Battistellas were one of those. So they bought the farm in 1945. And so they moved in, bought the farm, planted some vines, of which these ones are some of those. And it was not only was it a special deal to try and repopulate the countryside, but it was also an amazing vintage. It was a bumper vintage.
Oh, cool.
It was huge volume, and of course there was the euphoria of the end of the war, so the prices were good. And Mr. Battistella told me that they paid the entire farm off with 1 year's harvest.
Wow.
And it said to
That's
me,
awesome.
And it said to me, that's never going to happen again. And I said, you're darn right.
I am watching that show, I think A French Village, where World War II comes into the countryside, and it's fascinating, the history of that. And I actually lived in about an hour south of Chinon, and there was this huge.
Amazing.
I mean, there was a place called the Distillery that's now a bar and restaurant and a little like resort sort of thing for weddings and stuff. But they actually, it was right on the Saint Pierre River, and they converted beets into ethanol for the tanks. And so even in the countryside, you were affected by that there. So I'm fascinated by that kind of thing. So, and also just, I'm friends with Maureen Dubard at L'Ollerie in Bergerac. And she mentioned that even though they're not certified like you guys are, you're living in your vines. And so you're going to treat your vines like kids are playing in them, your pets are playing them, you walk around. It's part of your yard that, we would think.
No, I think that's a very, very good point. And in fact, to me, it's another reason why it's so important to support small farmers.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a concrete example of that. And I talk about it in my books, but down below us, there's a little village called Gardon. And they have their only water source is a well that is a surface water well. So basically, it's not a deep water well because it's down in the valley. They don't have access to a deep water well. They don't have access to an aquifer. And so it is the only water source for that village of like probably 7,000 people now. And it is so heavily polluted by what the local farmers are doing that it got special project status to work out how they could fix that, how to decrease the amount of pollution and how to change the way farmers were working. And it's been 5 years that they've been trying to make those changes. And of course, all those farmers that are farming conventionally and putting a whole lot of muck into the water system are doing it completely legally. But one of the things that Christine, the lady that was running the project, said to me at the end of the 5 years, I mean, they weren't given the teeth to be able to, like, they didn't have a carrot or a stick to make change. All they had was education to make change. So they did their best with what they had. And they made a little bit of inroads, but relatively not as much as would have been made if they had had kind of carrot and stick incentives in terms of finance and some sort of, I guess, fines if people were caught doing things that were bad. But the story I'm getting to is that she was taking samples out of all the little streams to work out who was using what and how come the stuff was landing up in the water source. So down to really knowing exactly who and what and where and why. And the worst offender of all of the 5 years of her analysis, the worst offender by far, was an absentee farmer who lives in Normandy and who just pays a service provider to come in and weed kill and then seed and do whatever he needs to do at the lowest possible cost. And for me, there's a whole lesson in that for all of us. That, you know, and she phoned the guy up and she explained what was going on, and he was like, I didn't know. I just pay this guy to do, you know, I didn't know that I was poisoning the local community. And so there's definitely a message there about, yes, you do care more if you live there. You do absolutely care more if your 100%. Kids are there and if all your family are drinking the water and so on and so on.
Yeah, that's another one of those lessons I'm hoping that this coronavirus teaches us, is that we are all connected and you can't just one person go and do your thing without affecting other people.
For sure.
So it is much easier to just machine harvest and spray the hell out of everything. How do you make a go of the business, and how big is your property, and how do you make a go as a business to be organic and to do that extra mile when it might not? How much more can you sell your wine for because it's organic? Is it worth it, and how do you make that work?
Yeah, for sure. Good questions. And I guess it's like anything, there are so many ways to run a business. You know, there's so many ways to approach the market. But there's no doubt right now, with people becoming more aware of how important organic is to their own health and to the environmental health as well. Because, you know, when we buy organic, yes, most of us, we're doing it for our own health, but we really are having a much bigger impact in doing that in terms of people around, like our effect on the environment. And we're not just talking about the birds and the bees, we're talking about the people living there. I mean, the case in Galdon that I just spoke about is a great example. So we're definitely, you know, buying organic for ourselves, for our health, for the environment, and for the wider community as well. And so I guess when we started out, there was not an obvious financial gain to be organic. It was still very marginal. So 15 years ago, 2005, we bought the farm, and at the time, only 1% of French vineyards were organic. Today, it's 10%. So it was so marginal that really the suppliers weren't bothered with, you know, supplying stuff you needed, and you know, the market wasn't really there. And I think people were buying the wine probably more because they knew us and we were making good wine than because it was organic. Mm-hmm. And I think that over time, though, there's no question that today the tide has turned and there's much more demand for organic. So anyone making bulk wine in organic is able to definitely sell it, whereas I think a lot of conventional winemakers are sitting with their wine in a tank, not going anywhere. If they're doing bulk market, I mean, we sell like 70% of our wine direct to end consumers. So we have a connection with clients, and I guess the smaller you are and the more direct you're selling, the easier it is to valorize and to explain why it should be a bit more expensive than, you know, the bottle on the supermarket shelf.
Is Bergerac in general a little bit ahead of the curve? I know the Conti family at Chateau de Gendre was very big on organic, but I feel that Bergerac's making a little bit of a name for itself by being really pretty strongly organic.
Yeah, we're I think the last stat I saw was something like 15% organic in Bergerac. So it's definitely ahead of the average in France. And when it comes to things like, for example, the people that are part of the Route des Vins, so all the people that do an active welcome like we do. We have a wine school here, and we do quite a lot of activity around kind of teaching about wine and wine tasting. But I think Bergerac is definitely ahead of the curve on the organic thing, for sure.
Yeah. And I always tell people who go to Bordeaux to give an extra day, and it's difficult for me to drive around Bergerac because I'm always pulling over to take a picture because it's so beautiful there, the rolling hills. It's just, it's the magical land for me. And I'm glad to hear all of that about organic because I firmly believe in that.
Yeah, for sure. So sorry, I was just finishing on the Route des Vins. So in the Route des Vins, about 50% of us are organic.
Oh.
So the people that are kind of actively selling direct are more organic in general, I think. Okay. Well, that's certainly the case in Bergerac.
And where would people find the Route des Vins guide? Just the Bergerac tourism office?
Yeah, and online, I think they have a PDF version that's available online and that they can send to you. Yeah.
And probably your website too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of info on chateaufili.com. Yeah.
Chateaufili.com. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
One of my little notes I want to ask you is, when you first moved there and you stayed at your friend's B&B, you had duck rillette with Sauvignac. Just because you're in Sauvignac, I know you don't make a sweet wine, but can you talk about pairing sweet wine with not desserts?
Yeah. So I absolutely love sweet wine with blue cheese. I think sweet wine and blue cheese is by far my favorite combination, and especially if you've got the blue cheese with something with a teeny hint of like a pear, rocket, and roquefort salad, and a sweet wine. And of course, in the region, foie gras is a big pairing to go with the sweet wine, because that's another big product of the Périgord. We don't buy the foie gras anymore because of the animal cruelty aspect.
Yeah.
But there's a funny story in one of my books, I think it's the second one, about how I was on my way to Thierry, actually, and Isabel to Chateau Le Peyrel, and on a walking tour with a group of advocates, 30-something-year-old advocates from London. And there was a pile of stuff on the side of the road, and it turned out to be like 6 entire foie gras freshly packaged in their vacuum pack.
Wow.
And so we were like, and it was on its, Vigier is this 4-star hotel with a Michelin star restaurant that's a couple of like 8 Ks from us, and it was a delivery for them, and it literally fell off the back of the van.
Oh,
and I was the lucky one to pick it up, and it was still cold.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Anyway, we called them up, and they said, "Well, you keep it because our chain of logistics is broken. We can't take it, so you keep it." And I was like, "Woohoo!"
That's another thing. The food in Bergerac, my gosh. So Anne Lataste, I visited when she was working for Wines at Bergerac, showed me some fantastic restaurants, and then I was there in August, and Marie-Pierre took me out, and the food and restaurants in Bergerac is phenomenal.
Oh, so good, so good, so good. We are so fortunate. I mean, the place, it really is. It is heaven on earth. I think Henry IV is the guy that said something about the wines and the food and the countryside, and this is heaven on earth. And boy, that was back in the 1500s. So
wow, yeah,
and it hasn't changed.
It really, really is. I want to go back to the Rillette and Sauvignac. What is your take on why the pairing as a wine pairing? Because people don't get savory food with sweet wine over here, and why do you think that works?
It's the contrast. It's the contrast of the salty and the sweet.
Salty and sweet. Okay, because
definitely.
My big thing is salt and vinegar potato chips with Sauterne, which I had last night, which is exactly the salty and sweet. But I tell people too that there's something about the contrast or the concentration of flavors, because foie gras is really concentrated. The duck rillette, I like duck confit or slow roasted pork, and it's just this concentration of flavors that it really it makes time stop when you have those foods in your mouth and you just kind of pause and wow, this is intense, and then do the same thing with Sauterne, because usually it's a contrast where you refresh your palate, but it's just I think time stops when you eat those things.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I think it's also a little bit the fat, that you've got the fattiness of like the rillettes and of the chips, and it's the acidity of the, if you just had sweet, it wouldn't work, but you've got the acidity that cuts the fat as well and brings the lift. So yeah, multifaceted.
My friend Becky Sue Epstein, who really is an equally great, or well, she's better than me, but she's a big proponent of sweet wine. She said it's like turkey and cranberry sauce. It's like the contrast.
Oh, yeah.
And then Sprocket, I think you can probably DM Caro directly, but he wrote, "Can we please come and help with the harvest when this is all over?" Do you hire, where do you get your harvest crew? Are they local, or are they from Spain, or how does that work there?
We work, usually there are about 7 of us, so myself and Sean and 5 other people. We've got an apprentice so we usually have someone who's with us, either a seasonal person or an apprentice that, like Elodie is with us this year. And then, so another 4 odd people. And they are usually people that are local that can do, because we need about 10 half days. So we're not a big enough operation. We're 7 hectares. I didn't answer your question earlier.
Okay.
7 hectares of vines, 14 hectares of farm. And so there's 7 hectares of vines, so we get that done in about 10 half days with 7 people.
That's very civilized. I think I could even handle that.
Oh, it's such an amazing time of the year. We love it so much. It's, do you know, and this is another thing I think, I write about it in my latest book, Glass Half Full, because it's the change. We changed to 100% hand picking in 2014. So before that, we were hand picking the Sauvignac, which had to be hand picked, and our top end reds. And then in 2014, we went to 100% hand picking, and it was quite an adjustment. And I was worried about it, but actually the joy of it overrode any of the extra physical demands and extra financial demands as well. I mean, there's no comparison. Comparison. Oh, you've got no idea. For us as the wine growers, hand picking, it's such a moment of joy, being out there at dawn, the vibe, everyone together, and the hum of the voices, and this, and just to touch on, I haven't spoken in too much depth about biodynamics, which is something I could talk for days about. But biodynamics is, yes, of course, there's like rules, there's quantitative stuff that I can cite, like the level of copper and the level of sulfites and all of that. But for me, it's really also about that more spiritual side of things, that more human connection that we really, in biodynamics, we think it's beyond just, quantitative. It's a bit more qualitative. And best example, or one of the best examples for me, was yes, in biodynamics, we say you really should handpick. It's not obliged for all the certifications, but it's requested. So a lot of biodynamics isn't all handpicked, but I understand why, because Cecile, who worked with us for a couple of years, amazing girl. She works in Argentina now, in Mendoza. But Cecile's just, she had already been working with me for a whole year. And I thought I knew her pretty well, because we would, you know, spend our days together. And it was incredible. I spent 4 hours picking with her one of the picking days. And at the end of the 4 hours, I knew more about Cecile and what really drove her heart than I knew from a whole year of working together.
Wow.
Now, for me, that is the message of biodynamics. You know?
Yeah.
It's the human connection.
That's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think of that. I was lucky enough a few years ago to have dinner with, or lunch with, Serge Hochar from Chateau Moussard. And he said having a glass of his wine is like having a conversation with him. And so I can imagine it's the same with your wine. It's there's something not tangible that it's really special.
Exactly, exactly.
I'm looking at the 45-minute mark now. I'm trying to keep these at a half an hour, but clearly I could talk to you for a long, long time. And hopefully sooner rather than later I can come visit.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Just before we go, can you show us a little more of the vineyard? And I just want to tell people this week, later today, I am talking, I can't even, my mind spaces when I'm on here. Later today, I am going to be in Colorado with their vineyard overlooking the Rocky Mountains with Storm Cellar Winery. And on Tuesday, I'm going to be in Priorat with Mustangil, and Tuesday afternoon with Opus One in Napa Valley. Wednesday morning at Chateau l'Evangile in Pomerol with the executive director of the domains of Baron Lafitte Rothschild, who also makes Riesec and Duhart Milan. And then Wednesday afternoon with Brooks Winery in Oregon. Thursday morning with Carolyn Volk of Elena Volk Winery. And then Friday with Maria Len from Chateaubriand Cantenac in Margaux. And Friday afternoon with Lulu Ojeda Martinez in Baja California, Mexico. So I have a big week of some really fantastic wines. And I'm so thrilled to start the week with you. And I have a little data surge while Caro gets her. I lost you. Caro, are you still there? I think there we are. You're back. Okay. Caro, are you there? There we are. Caro. I lost you for a minute. Sorry.
Ah, there we go. Can you see? Sorry,
yes.
I switched. I lost you for a bit. This is the courtyard. And you can see we're getting ready for our annual bottling tomorrow. So there's bottles in the winery, bottles on the landing. It's all systems go here, all pretty hectic and exciting. And then down below us here we have the east-facing slope. So this is Semillon and a little bit of Sauvignon. So Sauvignon and Semillon, east-facing slope, nice for morning sun. So really good for our dry wash wines. Then you can see really down at the bottom of the hill, there's another little section of Merlot, and then this hillside going down north facing, this is Merlot that we use mostly for rosé. And then you can see over there Sean's amazing potager and his garden. You can, I don't know if you can see the movement, he's there hoeing now. There's a little, he's stacking cut grass over there. I can just see his hands sticking up, and you probably can't.
That's awesome. Oh, gosh, that's just gorgeous. Those rolling hills, the vistas you can see forever. Oh,
There's
so
Dora.
oh, just
Yeah.
magical. Oh, that's so special.
So there
Thank
you have
you
it.
so much. Thank
Oh,
you for
it's a
sharing
pleasure.
with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure.
This has been a real great way to start the week, and thank you for sharing everything with us. I'm going to be in touch, and hopefully I'll see you sooner rather than later. And I will post this on YouTube and share the link with you. So thanks again, Caro. You're a delight to chat with. Oh, and your books are available on Amazon. You can see it. I pinned Caro Feely in the bottom there. She has 3 books. The first one is an ebook, so you can definitely get that anywhere. The last 2, do you have plans to go ebook on the second and third book?
Yeah, they're all on ebook.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah, all on ebook. And I'm busy on the 4th, so watch the space. Yeah.
Excellent.
And there's a wine book as well. There's a book about wine that's good kind of introduction for someone new to wine.
Okay. And again, I mentioned Martin Walker. He has about 15 books of the region that are fantastic too. So thank you.
So good.
Thank you for your time. It's really great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you too. And I just see that there was a question there about where we ship our wine. So yeah, we ship our wine all over Europe, UK, yes, Denmark as well.
Oh, fabulous. Okay.
Ireland, and even can ship to the USA now.
You do. Excellent. Okay, so we'll look for those. Thank you. And you're very good about checking your messages on Instagram. People can DM you if they have any questions also.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. This was really a lovely Monday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care now. We'll talk soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers, Jeff. Bye.